Hey everybody, this is Brett with the Indie Comics Dispatch and broadcasting from an undisclosed location deep within the Milky Way galaxy. This is a broadcast from the Dispatch.
If you got a story and you want the world to know it, if you think you ready and you ain't afraid to show it, throw your hands up high, yeah, we might stand out. We always representing cause that's what it's all about. We always representing cause that's what it's all about. And if you love some indie comics, let me hear you shout. Like, just stay tuned, what's the story? Had to get that every time a brand new indie comic from the Dispatch.
Hey everybody, welcome to another Thursday night, a broadcast from the Dispatch. I'm not going to take too long here because our guest this evening has a hard stop at 9 p.m. and so we're going to get to him so that we can talk to him as much as we can in the time that we have. But we're here tonight because Ben O'Grady pledged to the Kickstarter. Ben's going to be my co-host this evening, so I'm just going to go ahead and pop him in right now. Ben is an SEO expert working for Disney Streaming by day and aspiring comics writer by night. Ben does his writing after hours because he's a recent dad with a wonderful 5-month-old daughter. He lives in Orlando, Florida. Ben, welcome back.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me, Brett. Love the show and thrilled to be here again.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. You're at times contributor to Indie Comics Dispatch also. I said you were on the show not too long ago, and I said, you kind of helped us with our search engine rankings, as your bio says. You do that sort of stuff, so thank you for that. So tell us a little bit before we bring him on screen. You wanted to bring a guest. You're my guest, but you wanted to bring a guest also. So tell us about who's going to be joining us in just a moment.
Yeah, sure. So our other special guest is Tyler Jennis. I hope I said his last name correctly. I haven't met him, but he'll correct me if I'm wrong. He is the assistant editor or one of the editors for Best Jacket Press. That's Scott Snyder's independent comics label or publishing label. So Tyler works on pretty much every book that Scott is working on, plus a few others. He works with Will Dennis. He's, old school editor with DC for a long time. So Tyler sort of has I think, I've never talked to him, but I think he'll have an interesting perspective on how all of these big books get made. He's recently a new comics writer himself. He's published a couple of short comics in an anthology. So I wanted to ask him about that. I thought that'd be interesting because he's sort of in like two worlds now, like making comics on his own, but he's also working in the business on the publishing side. And last but not least, we have a class Discord.
Oh no, Ben, I don't know if I froze up or you froze up. I can still see Tyler moving, so I'm assuming it's your signal. Tyler's backstage. And so we'll just wait. Ben, if you get dropped, just pop back in. Oh, there you are. You're back, Ben.
Yeah, did I drop for a second?
You did, yes. Last we heard you say was that you have a class Discord.
Yeah, sorry. So I missed a couple of lines there, but we have a class Discord, and Tyler is one of the admins for the online class. It's a Scott Snyder comics writing class. So yeah, I just wanted to chat with him. I think he'll have some interesting perspectives, and we can kind of just rap about making comics and what it's like, being on the publishing side of the business too.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And so I'm going to welcome Tyler to the stream now. Tyler, welcome. Good to meet you.
Hey.
Hey.
What a glowing introduction. I hope I'm as interesting as you say I am.
Well, if you're not, we won't blame you. We'll blame Ben. So don't worry about it.
That's
You're
right.
on your way.
It's all Ben's fault.
Yeah, good to see you, Tyler. We've never met in person.
Good to see you, Ben.
Great to see you.
The pleasure is mine.
So Tyler, Ben kind of told us a little bit about yourself, but tell us more. What is your creator origin story? How did you get into comics? Why comics? How'd you get here?
Well, I was a film major in college, and clearly that went well. Well, there was a certain pandemic that happened about a year and a half ago that, as all you know, is still happening, but kind of derailed a lot of film stuff, including my film major. So what happened was I was supposed to go to LA and start the whole production assistant train, and when the pandemic happened, the only thing I had to fall back on was I had this comic convention class because my school, Ithaca College, every year they host this convention called Ithacon. It's actually the second longest running convention in America, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
student run at this point. So my professor, he felt kind of bad because obviously the convention couldn't happen. So what his backup plan was that every week he'd have a couple of people from the industry come in, tell us about what they're doing and what we can do. And one of those guests was Will Dennis, who is an alum of my college, and he was great. I loved hearing him talk about all the editing stuff. At that point, he had recently started a Undiscovered Country, editing that, and I tried to impress him as people tend to do. I asked some real inside baseball question about like before Watchmen and working with Len Wein, who was the original. Just a bunch of stuff that I'm sure made me seem real friendly and confident to my classmates. But he seemed to enjoy it, and at some point he said, "Hey, I've been really kind of overworked lately, so I'm probably looking for an assistant at some point." He just mentioned that offhand. And I said to my professor afterwards, "Hey, if he's serious, let's set up some kind of connection, match make this thing." And he did. And I've been working with Will for over a year and a half, and it's been great getting all that experience, and that led me into the Scott stuff.
That's really cool. Really cool.
That's a great origin story. Were you planning at all to try to get into the comics business, or it was just like film school? That's what I'm doing.
I was always a comic fan. Like my dad was a big, Marvel head and DC fan back in the day, and I got all of his comics. So I've always been a fan of comics, but the original goal was film major. I mean, by senior year, I was an English minor, so there was sort of like an inkling of something in that field. But no, it was kind of an unexpected twist that has set me on a now pretty permanent career path.
What exactly does an editor for Best Jacket Press or assistant editor for Scott Snyder do? Like, kind of let the audience know, like, what exactly is that role?
Gosh, I wish I knew, because every day it's pretty much, a different thing. Some days I'll be on a call with Scott trying to figure out how to break an issue. Some days it's, hey, we need you to write up solicits for this whole series. And some days it's, handling Substack stuff.
Talk about the Substack a little bit, because there are a lot of comic writers and artists, a lot of comic creators who are moving to Substack and bringing business with them to Substack. But Scott has a little bit different twist. Obviously I know because I'm part of it as a student, but Scott's, the way he's using Substack is totally different from all the other comic writers out there.
Yeah, hopefully we're doing something different. Scott's going more towards an education model, which isn't anything new to him. He's been doing comic teaching stuff for years now. He was teaching writing classes at like Sarah Lawrence 15 something years ago, which is where he met James Tynion IV. But this new model is on Substack. It's through Substack, at least. He has twice weekly posts. One's going to be free. One is for paid subscribers. And then once a month, he does a class based on a certain facet of storytelling, or, it'd be 3-act structure or characterization. Occasionally have a guest, like we've had Greg Capullo, Donnie Cates. We just had Chip Zdarsky the other day. And hopefully
nice.
It's fun. It's all archived, audio, video. You can find it all if you pay the $7 a month, which I think is pretty good.
That's
value.
a steal. Yeah, that's a steal.
Yeah, it's like less than the cost of 2 comics. It's a steal.
Yeah,
exactly. See what a promotion.
I know. We sound like the marketing department for Scott, but
it's my job.
So I'm one of the students in the class. I love it. I've gotten a ton of value out of it. I went to college for writing, creative writing, so I have a degree in it, and I've been part of writers groups and things like that before. But I think I can honestly say that this class in the Discord, which is where the community is, that's been probably the most motivating and good place for me to be as far as having a writing group. It's been kind of a game changer as far as my own production. So you guys are doing a great job. This Discord is great. Keep up the good work there.
Thank you.
So there's one other thing that I wanted to ask you about. This, I have a couple of questions here. So
Hit me with them.
yeah. So you were a part of a really huge anthology that was recently published. It's called The Most Important Comic on Earth. There it is right there. Look at how thick it is. Show everybody how thick it is.
Wow.
350 pages of
Wow.
comic. Published by DK Publishing. Is that right?
Yep, DK. That's what it says in the spine, at least. Something. Yep, there you go.
Yep. So you can buy it off Amazon or anywhere you can buy books, any major bookseller. 350 page anthology. That's massive. Like, how does a project like that? What can you tell us about how it originated? How you got part of that project? How challenging it was to put it together? Because I imagine it must have been just a total monster.
Oh yeah, it was an ordeal. So I got brought into that through Will Dennis. The project was started by a guy, nice British chap named Paul Goodenough, great guy. And he wanted to set this project in motion because he felt like storytelling was the best way to bring these issues to the forefront. And Will seemed to agree with them. Will was brought in. And because I'm still Will's assistant in a way, I was brought into that project, and he said, "Hey, yeah, let's do this. Let's have you as an editor on this project," which is kind of a first for me because I'm an assistant editor, so this is kind of just a full-fledged. You're full hands on deck, do whatever we need you to do. And at some point, he said, "Hey, you should probably write some of these stories that we have a deadline for, and we don't have any writers attached." And so I kind of said, "All right," and I wrote 5 stories that I at least have a writing credit on.
That's awesome. So I actually, probably the audience is like, I don't know what this anthology is, but I want to read the just the jacket description of it real quick.
And I'll drop a link in the chat too for anybody who wants to check it out more. I'll drop the probably the Amazon link in the comments section.
Yeah, I actually don't have it in front of me, but
you're slacking, Ben. You got to have that thing available, man.
Yeah, sorry about that. Do you have a jacket description on the copy that you have there?
A global collaboration that is rewriting extinction in support of Greenpeace, World Land Trust, Wildlife Trusts, Reserva, Rewilding Europe, and Rewild.
Wow.
And it's got a bunch of names on it. I'm sure you guys pay more attention to that stuff than I do. It's got a bunch of cool names. It's got a bunch of famous folks. It's got a bunch of famous comic folks. Just a murderer's row.
It really is. Let me just read a couple of the names just on the comic side, not even on the celebrity or activist artist side, but you got Alan Moore made a contribution, Kirkman and Adlard, Cliff Chang, Garth Ennis, Jerry Dugan, Jeff Lemire, Jock contributed art, Carl Kerschel, Marguerite Bennett, and that's just a tiny section of the list. 350 pages, there's got to be hundreds of stories in there.
Yep.
So if you're on the editorial staff, were you constantly emailing and communicating with all the various artists and collaborators to get material and working with them? Because
when you're dealing with that quantity of creators, it's all about all right, we need all of the scripts done, set in stone by this point. We need all the pencils done by this point. Oh, it's not colored yet. We need the colors done by this point. And we had a main letterer, Bernardo Bryce, amazing letterer who was able to handle pretty much all of it. We had a couple guest letterers like Todd Klein, who, if you look up the Eisner Award for Best Letterer, pretty much half of that is Todd Klein. He did at least one of those stories. So we had a lot of talent. We were able to handle it just because there was, I think, around 5 editors, including myself, that were having to keep everyone in line.
How did you even get some of the names on that list to contribute? Does Paul have all those connections, or you just shoot him an email, or how does that work?
A lot of it was Will, because Will, again, that's about 15 years at DC. You get a couple of connections that way. We called in a lot of favors. It was for a good cause, and so I'm sure that was kind of enticing. And I'm really grateful for all the amazing talent we got on this thing.
Yeah, it looks really cool. After Ben had sent me a link to it, I was like, I'm gonna have to get this book because this looks really awesome.
It's for a good cause.
It is. Well, that brings an interesting question for me. Is that a lot of people, I don't know how pervasive it is, but people say it's pervasive, that, you know, politics and political correctness and advocacy is ruining comic books. But comic books have always been advocates for
Did they not see
social
Captain
change.
America punching Hitler in the face?
Right? Like, have you gotten much pushback on that front yet from this book, or not so much?
I haven't seen it, and even if I did, I don't think that'd matter that much. If you're going against like Greenpeace for like their dedicated efforts to save the environment, I'm sorry, man. I'm not in your court, man.
Not gonna get any sympathy there.
Look, I'm just saying.
So I wanted to ask you about this. This is getting a little bit deeper into the book, but like Tyler said, he worked on 5 shorts. Some of them are as short as 1 page. Some of them are, I think, 4 or 5 pages. And some of the writers, like Tyler, worked with somebody else, right? Like it was like co-written. So on one of the stories, Tyler worked with Katie Tunstall, the Scottish singer-songwriter. Right? Is that correct?
Yeah. Suddenly I see a big black horse and a cherry tree. Man, 10-year-old me would have been just in heaven.
So how does that work that you co-wrote a comic with Katie? I'm assuming she's touring or she's in Scotland. Like, do you guys DM with each other? Like, how does that work?
We had an email going back and forth. Basically, the idea was, all right, Katie said, all right, I was in this expedition with a bunch of other musical people. We were, trying to help a good cause. There's this documentary that I believe you can find online on Vimeo. It's called Anta Miki or something like that. And it was a really good documentary, and that was the basis, at least. And then she also gave me a specific kind of soundtrack to work from, because there aren't there's no dialogue in the story. It's all just song lyrics. So I wanted the basis to go off of, and I wanted the actual track list. So she basically sent me a mixtape, essentially, and she gave me that documentary link, and I went from there.
That's cool. That's really neat.
That is really cool. I like that.
Yeah. Did you
and
think
we got great art?
Oh yeah, there's tons of good art in this book. Yeah, I downloaded it and I've been making my way through it. Haven't finished it because it's 350 pages, but yeah, there's a lot of fantastic artwork in there.
I'm sorry, I really interrupted. What were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was just saying, like, there's fantastic art in the book.
Oh yeah. So Craig Cermak did that story, and he did a great job. We had people for stories that I did, at least. We got Sheila Putri, Anneke Murienum. We got David Mack. That was huge, getting David Mack to do one of the stories. I co-wrote that one with Paul, the founder of the project, and Lucy Lawless. So that was a very, very fun experience.
Yeah, there's a 2-page short by Lucy Lawless, which I thought was pretty amazing. And the art was kind of like very like painterly, kind of like almost like colors. Yeah, so the artist was
David Mack.
Oh wow.
No, that was David Mack, who's done just he's a legend. I mean, he's done Daredevil, he's done every cover you've seen, just a genius.
Yeah. Was there any one story that was like really challenging to put together, like where the collaborators weren't communicating or anything like that?
Not in my memory. For the ones that I wrote, at least, it was all pretty much, we need a story, here's when it's due by. All right. And so that was my experience, at least, which is probably not going to be a model going forward for story writing, but it's what was needed. I've done like at least one webcomic for this campaign since, which I don't know, that'll get published at some point, but it's always fun.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, looks like a tremendous accomplishment. Like, just the project itself is just massive. So are you interested in continuing to write comics, or do you want to stay on the editing or publishing side? Like, what's your sort of future goal with comics now?
I think this is a happy medium. I mean, you see people like Claremont and Len Wein and Denny O'Neil that were able to basically do both for most of their careers, and that's a path I'd really like to explore. Like, Pete Tomasi was an editor for years and years before he finally broke in the writing side. So yeah, I want to explore some ideas, and obviously I want to actually go into the editing thing full force. So we'll see what happens.
Well, speaking of editing, I have a couple questions, because one of the things that independent creators, small press creators, are kind of known for is not editing their books well. So if you could throw out one or two things that you think would just help a lot of creators that you see often, or maybe while compiling this anthology that you saw a lot, what are just a couple things that independent creators should be looking out for as they're putting together their own books?
You don't need to have an editor that's not a like 100% a priority. I mean, Donnie
Right.
Cates, I believe, doesn't have an editor for any of his independent stuff, and he's doing pretty well. So even if you are an independent creator, I'd say have a small group, even like a friend who you know is not gonna, BS you at all. Have someone that can look at your story, and go, all right, look, this part of the story isn't cutting it for me. Have people that'll be able to look over your stories and be able to tell you the hard truths that you don't want to hear. Because let's be honest, if you're working on your own stuff, you're going to be a little bit biased. You're going to say like, oh, I don't really want to cut this part, or I don't want to mess with this character beat. But sometimes it's something that you're not going to be able to see for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Would you recommend hiring an independent editor to, edit your own independent stuff?
I'd say if that's something available to you, I'd say go for it. Someone with a lot of experience, especially if you're starting out, having someone that has done this before at your disposal is a very valuable asset, in my opinion.
What do you think, Brett? Hire editors?
I think if you can hire an editor, always hire an editor. But like Tyler said too, just at least have somebody who will read over and be honest with you. I mean, yeah.
Every writer has somebody that they're bugging with their story ideas.
I don't know. I've read some that I'm not so sure about.
Every writer worth their salt has
There you
something
go.
bugged.
There you go. There you go. I have a question on Instagram. Do you think having that deadline helped push you to finish the story, the anthology? I think is what they're talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, I just watched Tick Tick Boom, which is about Jonathan Larson, the guy who made Rent, and he was working on this musical for 8 years. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if this guy had like a 2-year deadline, he probably would have pumped that guy out a lot quicker. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's the best thing in the world to have a deadline looming over your head, but it's certainly a thing that can kick you in the pants when you know that something's due on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Sebastian Jones from Stranger Comics echoed very similar thoughts, saying, structure your time. You can be creative, but structure your time and give yourself deadlines, and you can always move your own deadlines, but try to put those out there.
Set goals for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I can definitely echo that as well. As far as submitting to anthologies, all of them have deadlines, of course. Like I've definitely made stories quicker than I normally would, wrote them, and then had the art made, usually by several months, only because there's a deadline there. Okay, I got to get my butt in gear and get this going and get it submitted. So yeah, for sure. I think that's good stuff.
John Westhoff says, deadline's good. That's how I imagine he said it.
How is Scott with his deadlines? Are you cracking the whip?
Scott thankfully has not been bad about deadlines. He keeps himself busy, and he knows when to turn things in. He's got will to crack the whip whenever he needs him to.
So one thing that Scott has talked about a couple times on his various podcasts and even in the class is that, he's got 8 books he's working on sort of in various stage of production on Comixology.
At least.
Yeah, at least 8 books, and how he's kind of spread the schedule out. But what's it like behind the scenes? Is it really like everything's managed? You got it under control, or is it just like controlled chaos?
I mean, you hear 8 books at once, and it's not really at once. I mean, Scott has said as much that it's basically in waves. So right now we're obviously focused on We Have Demons, Clear, and Night of the Ghoul, and so that's 3 books that we're all hands on deck on. That's nothing abnormal for a comic writer. A lot of writers are working on at least a couple books at a time. And obviously we have our eyes on the new stuff that's coming up, like, Dudley Datsun and Canary and Barnstormers, Ballad of Love and Murder. So, we have our eye on this stuff. And obviously once we get to it, we'll be all hands on deck. But, it's a lot more normal than you think it'd be.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Tyler, we get a lot of first-time creators watching the show, listening to the podcast. What's one piece of actionable advice you'd offer for a new creator who's got this story idea, really wanting to pull the trigger and create their book, but just hasn't done it yet?
Do it. I mean, it's not much harder than that. I mean, honestly, what is it? People have said for years now, like, just write something, it's not going to be good probably. Like, I'm not saying that everything you write is going to be great, but having at least something on paper is a lot better than most. You know, you can say like, oh, I have this great idea, but until you put it to paper, it's nothing more than an idea. If it's on paper, then you can hone from there. You can edit yourself. You can rewrite, but just do it. I mean, again, just barf out a story, you know, warts and all, and work from there.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Barf out a story. I think that's a quote that I'm going to use from now on. I love it. Ben, you have any? I know Tyler's on a strict schedule, and we got a little less than 4 minutes left here. But do you have any other questions for Tyler, Ben?
Well, I mean, I'd love to know, you know, what you're going to write, like what your next series or graphic novel is. Like, I'm sure you've got to be thinking about it, right?
God, I got some ideas brewing. I got a friend of mine that has this great idea, at least in my opinion. So I'm working on something, and I got people that I'll probably come to if I have something concrete. But until then, I'm not gonna say anything. Don't want to jinx anything.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. Yep, I know how that goes.
Very good. Well, Tyler, what's that? Go ahead. No, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I was just gonna say thanks for being on. You know, it's great to meet you, and the class is awesome. I love it, getting so much out of it, and you guys have been doing a great job as far as administering to it.
And you have something to promote, right, from the server? Did you want to talk about that now, or did you want to wait to talk about that?
I can introduce it now, yeah, and then Brett and I can talk about it. You know, because you got to take off. But the class is many people in the class have gotten together, and we're creating an anthology. It's a class anthology. So I'm on the editorial staff of that, and we're kind of in the beginnings, early stages of making the stories and scripts. And then the next phase, which will start pretty soon, is the art phase. So we're going to start getting the art put together. And then next year, we're going to launch a Kickstarter for the class anthology. So, you know, like everybody will be able to look forward to Scott Snyder comics writing class. And then at the end of it, we'll have like a really nice anthology that we can share with the world.
Which is amazing. I love that. And Scott said as much too. And we both are throwing our full support towards it. Whatever you need us to do, we'll be here for you.
That's awesome, man.
That's
we appreciate your support.
Of course, yeah.
Tyler, tell everybody where they can follow you, how they can support your work, and where they can learn more about what you do.
If you see a book with Scott Snyder on it, just buy it. That probably helps me at some point later on. But as for like my social media stuff, on Twitter, I'm TMJ902. On Instagram, I'm Tyler Janess. That's it. I host a podcast every week. That's a Fuller House themed podcast that I've done as a lark for the last year. Fullest House. Check that out. I don't know.
I had no idea you did a podcast. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Tyler, thank you again for joining us. Ben, thank you for inviting Tyler on. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being on.
Anytime you want me on, I'll hop on. This is great.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. We're going to transition out now. Well, you weren't lying. He is just full of wisdom and gosh, I mean, to be working for Scott Snyder and learning in that realm is just amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. So I didn't know this before I emailed him, I think yesterday, but I thought it was really fascinating how he just got involved with Will Dennis and Scott.
Yeah.
You know, he just talked to his professor connected him, and just being proactive and just said, hey, you know, I'd love to work with you. Like, can we do something? You know, I think a lot of things in the comic industry are like that. You know, it's just being proactive, reaching out, meeting somebody, asking if you can work with them, especially if we're talking about writers and artists. You know, it's really just like talking to each other and communicating. So I thought that was an interesting story, and it's turned into what could be the beginning of a career for him.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. And never be shy. Plenty of people on this show have said, you know, like if you have questions or just reach out to somebody, doesn't matter how big of a name you think they are, they're probably just a friendly person behind their social media profile. And if they have the chance, they'll respond to it. And he did that in person through his class, but that's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah,
they've been doing a great job with the class. Yeah, actually, and if you don't mind, like, do you mind if I talk about it a little bit more?
No, go for it. I was going to ask you to, so feel free.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so again, this is going to sound like I'm their marketing department, but it's for indie comic writers. I think this is a great space, right? $7 a month, you get one live class with Scott. It's usually like 2+ hours, and he has badass guests on. So last night he had Chip Zdarsky, and him and Scott just rapped about character arcs, and they looked at various books, Daredevil and a couple other things. And there's just a lot of really golden nuggets that you get out of all the talk between those two veteran creators. The other side of it is the class Discord. And if you've never been in a Discord, which I hadn't until recently, it's like an online class space. It looks kind of like Slack, but they have all these different channels, channel for writing sharing, channel for art sharing, channel just for talking about comic books, et cetera, et cetera. And you're in a community with hundreds of other people, and you're just rapping about comics and making comics, all day and all night long. And for me, like, I didn't have any writing community at all. Like the friends I had in graduate school who are writers have scattered to the four winds, haven't talked to them in years. So, Brett, it can be a very lonely vocation just sitting at home writing, right?
Yeah.
And not having other people to share and to bounce ideas off of. So this community, I feel, has been the most valuable part of that class because it's really interactive, a lot of energy there, just good vibes, and there's a lot of people just talking about comic stuff, so if somebody's looking for a writer's group, if somebody's looking for like a community like this, which is really active, then I would highly recommend it.
So let me ask you about that. So they post certain content at the Substack for free, and then some of it's paid. Is the Discord for paid, or is it for anybody who wants to join?
Yeah, the Discord is for the paid only. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
but still, like $7 a month, like that's hella good price, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
yeah,
God.
Yeah, like you get your money's back. I think just taking one class with Scott, just the information, and then if you just spend a week in the Discord, I think it's got to be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. I don't know, but just being part of that vibrant community has been like awesome for me.
Well, we have a question in the Instagram chat. Where can we find the link? So how would somebody go about finding this? It's an Instagram, so I can't drop clickable links in the Instagram chat, unfortunately, but we can walk you through how to get there.
So I don't have it in front of me, but I'm sure, let me see, if you just Google Best Jacket Press Substack. So it'll turn up, and it's so Scott's label is called Best Jacket Press.
Yep.
And you can join it right there. You get a free weekly newsletter if you just want a taste of it. And then you can sign up, obviously, for the $7. Then you get access to all the material in there. So all the old videos and past posts. And you also would get access to the class Discord, which is what I'm talking about. So I think when you join, you would have to maybe DM Tyler, the gentleman we were just talking to, and then he would bring you into the Discord, something like that.
Well, I'll say the Best Jacket has 2 T's in it, press.substack.com. You can go there and find it's really easy, or just Google Scott Snyder Substack. It's the first result. So yeah. Pretty cool. I'm a novice to Substack. I've looked at it a little bit, but never jumped in full force. So.
I wanted to kind of talk to you about this. Yeah. So I had never looked. I didn't even know what Substack was until maybe 3-4 months ago.
Yeah, I'm probably the same for me, to be honest.
Yeah, like I didn't even know what the term meant, and I saw all these industry articles that there were all these famous comics writers moving over to Substack. I was like, what does this mean? Why are they doing this? So I started reading all the articles, and then I started following a couple different creator Substacks for the free stuff, just to see like what it was all about. So it's basically just a website that's an online newsletter. They send you the newsletter once a week. If you pay, you get like a premium access. And some of these creators are actually creating comics and publishing them on Substack. So that's like the big move, is publishing Substack specific comics. And Substack is actually paying some of these creators big money to move over to their platform.
That's really cool. Cool. So it's almost like a breed of Udemy for online courses, plus Webtoons, plus I don't know more, because it's really very much more interactive than like a Udemy course would be, which is all pre-recorded and such.
Yeah, I'm always hesitant when I see new shiny things like that pop up, for
Uh-huh.
writers and artists and creators. And I was very like hesitant to look at Substack stuff. I'm like, I just want to read my comics. I don't need to go get an online newsletter.
Yep.
And so I don't subscribe to any other creators except for Scott's and a couple of the free ones. So I don't pay for anyone but Scott's, because I think that model of doing education via that plus the Discord is actually like really good. Like it works really well for online stuff.
And I've seen a lot of independent creators, pretty small independent creators, starting their own classes, and I'm not sure. More power to you if if that's what you want to do. I'm not going to say don't do it, but I think that people could get a ton more wisdom and industry experience out of doing something like this with Scott. And again, $7 a month. I mean, hell.
Yeah. So, and I'll even go one level further. Again, this sounds like marketing stuff, but we have the class Discord. That's been great. There's probably hundreds or maybe over 1,000 people in there. And then there's the Anthology Discord, which is a separate Discord. Anyone in the class is allowed to participate in the Anthology, right? You just have to be in the class and we'll bring you in. And most of the people who are submitting and working on the Anthology are newbies. They've never written anything that's been published, never written a comic script. And so we're taking these writers from zero to, I'm going to publish a short comic, 6 pages. And basically the group is kind of like teaching everybody the tools and nuts and bolts that you need to make your first script, to hire an artist, to work with the artist on like layouts and inks, how to find a colorist if you want to do colors, letters, et cetera, et cetera. And, I have a little bit of experience making short comics, but it's been wild for me to see like the growth of some of these writers who have never written a script before. And now, just like 4 or 5 months later, they're writing kick-ass like short comic scripts.
That's really cool. I love anthologies. We met because you submitted to Tales from the Dispatch.
Yep.
And so I love anthologies. And I agree with you. I'm pretty sure you said this, that, one of the best ways to start creating is through an anthology. I encourage everybody, if they're wanting to get into it, to find an anthology to submit to, or if you don't want to go that route, at least make a short preview issue of whatever book you're thinking of in your head, like a 4 to 6 page preview issue, so you can write, you can set up tell a story in a tight page limit, and you just get experience.
Absolutely. Do you want to talk about Tales from the Dispatch Volume 3? This sounds like
sure. Yeah. We just launched it. That is a great segue.
Teeing it up for you.
Thank you. We just launched it, and we are partnering once again with Drew from Snowy Works. Drew and I kind of approached each other with the same idea last year. He kind of said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing an anthology?" I thought, "Hey, I thought about doing one that encouraged for first-time creators to submit." And he's like, "Me too." And so we kind of launched it, and ended up just giving or receiving so many submissions that we did 2 volumes last year. And so it was both volumes together is over 100 pages. And so we are trying to do just 1 volume this year, but still a larger page count on it. So we're currently taking submissions. We already got 2 submissions. We just launched last week, and we already have 2 submissions, and you can submit to the anthology to the end of February. It's I just love anthologies. I love it because you can pick it up, you can read a short story, put it down, pick it up again, and just read another short story, just as time allows. I have 7 kids. My household is very busy. And so anthologies, I just love them. They speak to me.
Yeah, I love anthologies too. One of the things I like about anthologies is they're really like kind of a breeding ground for the most wild, edgiest little stories you've ever seen. So yeah, I totally agree with you there. I plan on submitting to Tales from the Dispatch. I had a great experience last year. Everybody was just really terrific on the team that worked on that. I'm very proud to have one of my comics in there. My first published comic actually was in that one. So fantastic. Yeah, like if you're a creator and you're looking to place like a short comic, this is the place to do it. I did post it in our Anthology Discord.
Oh, cool.
So I'm hoping that some of the creators working on my anthology are going to submit to yours also.
Definitely. Well, we also this year we're partnering with Lesser Known Comics, who's sponsoring us and sponsoring the prizes. So we actually have some better prizes this year too. Because we'll have a panel of judges that pick the top 3 submissions, and so I'll probably get something wrong about this, and so I'm sorry. Wait for the official publication of this. But Mark from Lesser Known Comics just told me yesterday that for the top 3 winners, they'll receive 10 copies of the anthology. 10 copies.
Nice.
50 copies of their own ash can. So an ash can of the story you submitted that you can take and give away or sell or do whatever you want, and 10 sketch cover versions of your ash can. So that those can be remarked and such. So yeah, I mean, so it's just growing even more this year. We're gonna, well, I don't want to give too much away. I'm gonna let Mark. We have more coming up this year still about this anthology that hasn't even been announced yet. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh.
There's more coming. A kind of side contest that Lesser Known Comics will be running along with the anthology, and yeah. Drew and I just decided on the standard cover homage that's going to be for the standard cover. Again, if you saw last year's covers, they're both homages to EC Comics, and so it'll be another EC tribute cover. So
yeah, that's terrific. Drew's been an extremely wonderful and valuable resource helping us. We actually brought him in, and we did a Zoom call just in our anthology group with Drew, like presenting, because we've never done a Kickstarter before, much less made an anthology. So, we need to kickstart it at some point, and Drew's done multiple, so we asked him a million questions, and he was extremely generous with his time and like helping us out. And, like, that's what it's all about. Good community.
Well, speaking of Drew, I'm trying to pull up the link right now. You are in an anthology of Drew Lenhart, Snowy Works, across social medias. His comic book imprint is Snowy Works LLC. It's currently on Kickstarter for just a little bit longer. You want to tell about that anthology real quick, and I'll pull up this link?
Yes, for sure. Okay, so like Brett said, it's called Future Sci-Fi Tales. It's published by Snowy Works, which is an indie publisher. And it's a terrific sci-fi anthology, short comics. And I think there's, 6 or 8 stories. I can't remember exactly. I've read it. I read an advanced copy. It's wonderful. The stories are great. The artwork's terrific. Our Kickstarter has, I can't remember how many days left, maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, I just pulled it up. Let's see here if it says how much longer.
And we're very close to our funding goal, so please support this Kickstarter.
Yeah, less than $150 I saw. So
yeah, I'm feeling good about this one. I'm pretty sure we're going to get there.
Yeah, you'll definitely get there. So I just dropped the link for that if anybody wants to. 13 days ago, you still have almost 2 weeks left. So you guys got this. Less than $140 till goal, with almost 2 weeks left. You guys totally got this. And if you've ever, if you've read Tales from the Dispatch, that's an anthology that Drew helped edit, put together. Drew has tons of great books out. Drew's really good, like you said, at kind of directing the anthology aspect of it and putting stuff together. And this one, I hadn't watched the video for this campaign yet, and so I had watched it yesterday. The Spatial Void, Future Sci-Fi Tales Spatial Void is the name of the sci-fi anthology. I watched it yesterday, and I'm so excited for this book.
Oh, it's terrific. Yeah, me too. Yeah. I was in a very fortunate position. I had just made a new comic, and I just had it in my drawer. I hadn't placed it anywhere. And I was sort of emailing with Drew a little bit. And, I said, hey, I have this comic, but I don't have anywhere to place it. And he's like, hey, I had somebody drop out of the anthology I'm working on now. It hasn't even launched yet. Would you be interested in submitting to that? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, I'd love to do that. I actually have read Future Sci-Fi Tales, the earlier volumes, on my Kindle. So I knew what it was. And, I jumped all over that. So thrilled to be in that one as well.
Yeah. It's great. So you got lots of anthology work going on here. Do you have plans to do a full book? Do you have a story percolating in your head that will be a series or perhaps a graphic novel?
I do, actually. Yes. I'm in the beginning stages and started working on what I think is going to end up being either a 4-issue series or a graphic novel. It'll be about that page length. It's YA fantasy with a little bit of horror. I've had this idea kicking around for a couple of years. It's a rather kind of like big personal story for me because it takes place in a setting where I actually lived when I was a lot younger. So yeah, I just started working on that. I've sort of like made a story treatment for it, and I even have a couple script pages written, but it's going to be a while before I can really like dive into that. Like, I think what I am going to do is really focus on the Scott Snyder anthology, kind of get that in a good place before I start working on this other project, because that's going to be huge. I have a day job, so I can
And a
only
5-month-old.
Yeah, 5-month-old. So I can only work on comics like after the baby goes to bed and late at night. And, I think a lot of indie creators know how that works.
Travis Gibb, another he has his own series, but he also has a couple of great anthologies. Cthulhu Invades Oz, Cthulhu Invades Wonderland is coming up. It's the anthology stories of Cthulhu invading various fantasy lands. They're fantastic. So thank you, Travis. Yeah. So how do you work in the evenings? For me to be in the writing mood has to be very quiet, which is why I'm a slow writer, because my house is hardly ever quiet.
Yeah.
But how are you juggling full-time job, 5-month-old daughter, and all this writing you're doing?
Yeah, it's really tough. It's not easy. I mean, I don't know when you do your creative work. I imagine it's got to be late at night, right?
It's actually usually in the morning. I'm usually too tired at night, but I get up
Okay.
and kind of early with my daughters, my older daughters, to get them ready for high school, and then I'll write then.
Okay. Yeah. So I have the same problem being really tired at night. I'm at my like creative nadir in the evenings, but what I've been doing, I have a 5-month-old. So what I've been doing for the last like 6 months or so is I've been just kind of like forcing myself to fire the laptop up and just start writing, shitty drafts at like 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes I'll go to midnight. Sometimes I'll go to 1 or 2. I've done that a few times. And it's not easy, like the creative juices aren't really there at the end of the day. Sometimes I'll drink a Red Bull. Sometimes I'll drink iced tea. Like you just got to do what you got to do, man. You just got to grind. Yeah. How are you able to write in the morning, like when the kids are active?
Well, so my two daughters, high school where we live starts like way earlier than everything else. So I get up at 5:30 with my two older daughters, and so we are up for over an hour before any of the other kids get up. And so I just make sure they wake up, and then I sit down on the couch and I drink my coffee, and I'll either post stuff for the Dispatch, reviews and news articles on indiecomicsdispatch.com. Check it out. Or or I'll be scripting pages for Immortalis, or be working on some sort of feature article for Indie Comics Dispatch. That's not just the general press releases and solicitations that the publishing companies send us. So yeah, I get that done in the morning. Before, sometimes in the evening, like if I didn't get much done in the morning, I'll sit there in the evening after the kids go to bed. But mostly morning now. I'm not a morning person, but I've kind of trained myself to be more creative in the mornings than I used to be.
Yeah, it's been tough. Like I can only do those late night things like maybe 2 times a week because it actually has a toll on me, my performance the next day.
Yeah.
It's just tough. Like I'm sure every indie creator has like a similar story, but I don't have any plans to ditch my job anytime soon.
No.
If I ended up writing a book professionally or for money or whatever, like on a regular basis, I'd have to really figure out how to balance that.
Yeah.
It's a tough, it's a labor of love. Let's put it that way. So you just mentioned your book. Why don't you tell us about your book, Brett?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ben. I try to keep those lines separate, so I don't mention a lot on this show, but I am writing a book for Wingless Comics. It was an idea that I've had since, undergraduate school. I was taking a medieval history class as part of my major, and just fell in love with this story of the fall of Constantinople, which seems like a really weird story to fall in love with, but it's just such an epic story that the history itself is really cool about it. But then you get into all this myth and legend that surrounds it too, and it just gets even cooler. And so I don't want to give too much away, but it is about the fall of Constantinople, 1453. The Turks are, the Ottoman Empire are closing in. The Byzantine Empire, what remains of the Roman Empire, essentially, is down to basically the city-state of Constantinople. And Emperor Constantine, the last one, is looking for everything he can do to stop it. And in the book, it's a fictionalized prophecy, but there is a prophecy that there will be a savior to the people of Constantinople, and so Constantine really thinks it's him, and so he operates through the series as if he's the savior, and we don't know. He could be, or he might not be. That's the thing, is it's prophecy's ambiguous, and it could end up being him, or it could end up not being him, or the prophecy could just be total hogwash. And so we explore him, a person he meets named Gailu, who he has a love affair with, and then his kind of his right hand man Lucas. So, and it's surrounding the final days as the Ottoman Empire just closes in on the city. And the Ottoman Empire, for the most part, tries to do it in a very peaceful way. So it's not like really a war story. It's more of just this kind of last days story. So I'm excited about it. Issue 1 will be coming out in 2022. And so issue 0 was part of the Nightfall Part 3 campaign, and I'm super excited about it. Ask Brian Lambert. He'll tell you I bug him probably too much about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can tell you're excited about it. I mean, that's really cool. So how long is the series? Like, what's your plan to...
So
get it out there?
you, I kind of, from the start when I was kind of scripting the series, it could go on, but this first arc is 4 issues, and it's just all around the fall of Constantinople. If the characters go on within the Wingless universe, because it is set within the Wingless comics universe still, and so if they go on after these 4 issues, it'll depend upon, I guess, the success of the Kickstarters and everything. But it's just 4 issues to so far planned. Brian's watching. It's never going to end, he says. So,
yeah, like 4 issues for what I'm working on, I thought was the most I could commit to and possibly get it done. Because you know how hard it is to get these things over the finish line and get them funded.
Yeah.
And how expensive they are just to produce. So yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, and I'm really trying to like pre-plan this and just like approach it like slowly and methodically so that I get it right. You started already on the art making on yours, right?
Yeah. So, issue 0 is done. Issue 0 was 4 pages. And so it was just a preview issue. It was part of the Nightfall Part 3 campaign and will be available early 2022 on the Wingless Comics website as a free download. So cool. We had an artist on that. I have since been trying out other artists to try to find a different art team. Not that issue 0 art's bad. I just don't think it was what it could ultimately be. And I think we've hit a winning ticket now. I think Brian and I agree that we found a good team.
That's awesome. So a little bit of a non sequitur, but we've had this issue come up in our anthology group that you may or may not know how to handle. I'm sure you do, actually. Is that some of our new creators, they're engaging with artists. They pitch them. This is what my story's about. It's 6 pages. And then they sort of make a verbal agreement, and then at some point the artist just disappears, right? No communication. They just totally flake out. Have you had that happen to you? Have you talked to people where that happens? Like, how do you deal with that?
I've heard it happen to people. It's not happened to me yet. Like I said, we've only really done 4 pages and then some special commission pieces. So it's not been anything major. Gosh, I think one of it was last week. Somebody was talking about, we're indie. We want to trust everybody. We believe the best in the community. At the end of the day, if there's money involved, you need a contract still. And so I think setting clear expectations, contract, what you're going to pay up front, what you expect in return before you pay more. Sometimes these contracts won't be enforceable because a lot of people hire artists outside the country, but at least there's that kind of agreement between 2 people of what you're going to be getting and what you're going to be giving.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And that's a whole tricky thing is when you're working with overseas talent also that you just identified, like even if you have a contract, like how do you enforce it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it helps to strengthen sort of the connection between like a writer, if the writer's here in the US, and talent that's overseas somewhere.
Yeah.
I've only worked with artists that are overseas, actually. Like I haven't worked with an American artist yet. I'm not sure why. I think, there's just like talent everywhere, and that's just the way it's happened.
Yeah, I agree. I worked with the colorist that I've asked to be the colorist on issue 1 is American based, and that's the first artist person that I think I've worked with that's been US based.
Yeah.
So Chris Lawson, I do want to pop this up here real quick, says, for Tales from the Dispatch anthology, do we submit a script and then if selected we make the comic, or do we go ahead and submit the entire comic? It's complete comic submissions, Chris. So we are looking for your completed work, and we do that because there's a lot of people out there. If you go on these Reddit subreddits and like Ben was talking about on Discord and stuff like that too, there's all sorts of places where people have already created their first story. They're just looking for somewhere to publish it, and so that's why we do full comic submissions. So yeah, it's words and art both.
Yeah, and good to see you, Chris. Chris is in our anthology group.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think I know the answer to this, but let me ask you, Brett. Is it pretty common for anthologies to require full art?
I've seen it both ways. I've seen it what Chris is saying, where you submit a script, and then I think that's kind of how Tyler's anthology, the greatest comic ever published or whatever, or in the world, was where they had people submitting scripts and then they paired them with an artist. Lesser known comics who's sponsoring Tales from the Dispatch actually has some projects where they'll take scripts from people and then pair them with an artist. But there's also lots of anthologies that want a completed story, and that's the boat we're in. Just because we're smaller and we can't necessarily facilitate all the art stuff, we want to see the completed package. So
how is the contest component of the new anthology for you going to work? Is it similar to last year?
No, it's going to be different than last year, because last year's winners were all superb, don't get me wrong, but we don't want it to be necessarily a popularity contest. And that's kind of what last year's was. Who could get the most people to go vote for them? So people with a large social network may have been the winners. That's my guess. We're going to put together a panel, Drew and I, and then Mark from Lesser Known Comics, and we're going to pick a couple other people to be on this panel to kind of judge the pieces. And then probably we're sticking with a page count ish, probably slightly over 100 pages in this one. And so however many stories we can pick that fit that page count, we're going to pick. So the last year we ended up publishing every story that was submitted. This year, depending on how many submissions we have, we may not be able to publish every story, but people can take that and resubmit it to other ones, to other anthologies, or we'll do another anthology next year, hopefully too, volume 4.
Yeah, and there's a lot of anthologies out there. Sometimes you don't get into one, but your story might find a great home in a different one, like an anthology you've never even heard of. And I think that happens actually quite a bit. So,
and I would say don't be afraid to publish. Like if you submitted a story to an anthology and you don't get picked, don't be afraid to publish that on your own website. Just get your work out there. I think submit it, but if it's not looking like it's going to be picked up anywhere, publish it on your own website, publish it to WebTunes, publish it wherever you can publish it at.
Yeah.
Brian's talking in the chat about working with foreign artists. One piece of that breakdown sometimes is communication, and he means our form of it. So we can be off-putting accidentally, and that can ruin what's potentially a good thing. Yeah, Americans can have a tendency to offend people not from America. So with Wingless, we also make sure to do a few test pieces. Yeah, that's what I was kind of talking about before, from an artist before we get fully book work going.
Okay, that's interesting. So is it like sort of commission them to do concept work art?
Yeah, concept. Like for the person who has ended up doing the lines, it's going to end up doing the lines for issue 1. I just sent them some piece. I said, this is a piece. Maybe it's a pinup, maybe it's a cover image, but I'm going to give it to you like I'm writing a panel. And so I made sure that the artist could interpret my words as the writer how I wanted them. And so the person, I gotta ask him how to say his name, but the person we're looking at for issue 1 is phenomenal. He knows exactly what I'm saying and gets it down with the 2 pieces that I sent him to do. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I've worked with 2 artists, one from Italy and one from Spain. Neither of them speak English very well, and the Italian artist doesn't speak English basically at all.
Oh, wow.
He says he can read it, but he can't speak it. So I know that because I've asked him. I was like, how are you interpreting scripts?
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is they're taking it, they're running it through like an app, like a website app.
Uh-huh.
And it completely translates the whole thing, and then from there they're kind of breaking the story and doing layouts, which just like really amazes me, that works.
Yeah.
And like the Italian artist in particular, that I've seen his layouts he made for my most recent comic, and they're incredible. Like I only needed 3 or 4 revisions over 6 pages, which is unbelievable. And I'm just like, how are, like, are you this good, that you
Right.
can translate, my crappy script and like you just nail the layout. So yeah, it's pretty incredible that this process even works and that we're able to find, like such talented artists like all over the world. Like that's one of the things that got me really seriously into making comics the last couple of years, is because of all this access and all the tools that are out there now to connect with artists and to get books published in various places. Like 10 or 20 years ago, like you just wouldn't be able to do these types of things.
Yeah, like Tyler said, like, I mean, his piece of actionable advice was just do it. Like, just do it. And there's so many, even just Facebook groups where you can find an artist to work with. And really you can, so I'm not saying you can find quality, maybe the quality you want, but you can find an artist at almost every budget level that will do what you need done. And so maybe your first book isn't top, tier art, but that book is done, or that story is done, and it's out of you, it's out there in the world. Yeah,
for sure. I actually think it's pretty difficult to find an artist at a price that you can afford that has sort of like the style and the quality that you want. I've spent weeks looking for an artist on my latest story. And then prior to that, I probably spent, like, for the Arborist, the one that I submitted to Tales from Dispatch, I bet I spent 2 months looking at artist portfolios and going through all those Facebook groups where people are posting portfolios. And until I found an artist where I was like, I really love this guy's art.
Yeah.
It looks like he can make certain elements that are in my story, things like trees and mechs and things like that, snow.
That's how I found my colorist, was those Facebook groups, just pouring over other people's posts. I never even posted anything of my own, but just pouring over other people's posts.
I did the same thing. I was just lurking, and I was just looking at portfolio links, and every night I would go and look at some. And it took me like 2 months to find an artist that I really liked. And he knocked it out of the park. We connected great. We're like friends online now. I want to work with him again. Like, I want to generate more stories so that I can work with him. And that's just been a wonderful experience, actually, is creating those relationships with these like amazing artists that are like all over the world.
The person doing lines and inks, I actually randomly emailed Drew from Snowy Works, and it's like, hey, do you have anybody you work with? And he said, well, there's this one guy, and he did one book for me, and I really want to do more with him. I just haven't been able to. I was like, do you mind if I email him? He's like, no, go for it. And he's just the one that was just able to interpret just like my words on the page, just exactly how I saw them in my mind. So it's great having, like I said earlier, just, never be afraid to reach out to people in the indie community. And respectfully ask questions, right?
Absolutely.
There's good ways to do it and there's bad ways to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you definitely want to treat everybody well, treat like you would want to be treated in the indie community. It's a really small community, actually. So you don't want to get a reputation as being an a-hole or anything like that. And certainly pay your bills on time too.
Yep. Because people will air their grievances if you don't.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, we're kind of coming to the end here. Tell people out there where they can follow you, how they can support your work, and how they can keep hearing from you as you continue to output more stories.
Okay, yep. So I'm on Twitter. That's just my name, Ben O'Grady. There's no apostrophe or anything like that. So at Ben O'Grady. On Instagram, I'm Dreamcat DJ. So I'm actually a hobbyist DJ. So that's my handle there. And then to support, I would love it if anybody who listens to the pod supports the current Kickstarter, Future Sci-Fi Tales. We're only like $100 or so away from getting fully funded. So please support that if you haven't already. If you're listening and you have supported it, thank you very much. And then sometime next year, early next year, we're going to launch the Kickstarter for the Scott Snyder class anthology. I'll be posting that and blasting it all over my socials. We'll definitely need like everybody's support on that one too. That's going to be like a very big project for us. So yeah, that's how you can find me. I'm on Facebook too, Ben O'Grady, same thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And when that, I'm sure you will, but when that anthology launches, be sure to send Indie Comics Dispatch a press release on it. We'll do a full little feature on you guys to get that going too, and hopefully get you guys some more pledges.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, I appreciate all the help we can get. And let me tell you, Brett, making an anthology is a lot of work.
Yeah. I get the easy part. I get to like help promote it and do the story stuff. Drew gets to do all the assembly stuff behind the scenes, and so poor Drew. I know it's a lot of work for him, and so
yeah, labor of love. He does a great job at it, though.
He does. He really, really does. Ben, this has been so great. Thank you for your support of the Dispatch, and thank you for this evening's topic and just bringing Tyler and just being able to chat, man. This has been a great show. I really appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I loved it as well. I love being on the show. Love Indie Comic Dispatch, and my pleasure. Anytime.
Great. Everybody out there watching, there's no show next week. We are off because it's Thanksgiving, and I'm going to be eating food, and so I'm not going to want to get on and do a podcast. But catch us the next week, and we got really a couple more shows left of 2021. Taking a break over the holidays, and then we'll be back in 2022. We'll have a new co-host for the show, and I'll be announcing that soonish. I have it narrowed down. I just have to make my final decision, and so we'll be announcing that very soon. And so, lots of stuff in store. Quentin's Engine Works. I saw Quentin in the chat earlier. I think he'll be back in 2022 with his show. We got to work out some timing stuff, but I can't wait to see him back on the air too. Ben, thank you again. Everybody out there watching, thank you so much for watching. If you're listening to the podcast after the fact, hey, join us for a live stream sometime. It's a lot of fun. You can interact with us. Everybody out there, we will see you in 2 weeks.
Bye, everybody. Thanks a lot, Brett. Have a good night.
You too.